Have you ever felt completely powerless in the face of an impossible situation? Have you had that moment when all doors closed, all resources ran out, and all that remained was silence? What if I told you that exactly in that moment, when you seem weakest, you have access to the most powerful force on earth? I'm not talking about a metaphorical or poetic force. I'm talking about a power that has already reversed death sentences, saved entire nations from destruction, shut the mouths of hungry lions, and transformed the deepest anguish into unshakable authority. Today, you're going to discover what happens when an ordinary person accesses the extraordinary power of prayer. Be honest with me for a moment. When you think about prayer, what comes to your mind? A religious ritual? A list of requests sent to heaven? Maybe even a kind of hopeful monologue where we vent our problems. I used to think that way too. I thought prayer was about my words, about my faith, about my effort. But the truth is far more impactful. Prayer doesn't possess power in itself. You read that right? The power isn't in the act of praying. It's in who hears. Prayer is the catalyst that activates the arm of Almighty God. It's when the weak church cries out to the omnipotent God that history begins to change. Think about it. You're not just talking into the void. You're summoning the creator of the universe to intervene in your reality. That changes everything. Let me tell you a true story that happened over 3,000 years ago, but could be today. Imagine a leader named Moses facing the worst possible news. God had decided to completely destroy his nation. The sentence was decreed. The end was near. There was no human way out. What would you do in that moment? Moses did something extraordinary. He placed himself between God and the condemned people and prayed. But it wasn't a polite or formal prayer. It was a bold, passionate cry. He went so far as to say, "God, forgive this people or erase my name from the book you have written." And you know what happened? The divine decision was altered. The sentence was suspended. An entire nation was spared because one man dared to pray. Now tell me, who in your life today needs you to stand in the gap? Your family? Your children? Your country? Intercessory prayer has the power to touch God's heart and manifest His infinite mercy exactly where it seems impossible. Here's a practical teaching that can change your life today. Don't wait until you're perfect to pray for others. Moses wasn't perfect. He was a man with flaws, fears, and limitations. But he had one thing: a heart willing to stand in the gap. Do this today. Choose one person you're going to pray for consistently for the next 30 days. It doesn't need to be a long prayer. It can be simple. Lord, I stand in the gap for name. Manifest your mercy over his or her life. Write down the name, pray every day, and watch God act. Because when you pray, you're not just speaking words, you're activating God's arm to move on behalf of another person. Now, what if the crisis isn't with someone else but with you? What if the diagnosis is terminal? What if the sentence seems final? King Hezekiah was in that situation. At 39 years old, he received a death sentence not from a doctor, but from God himself. Set your house in order, because you will die and not live. It was the end. There was no appeal, no second opinion. But Hezekiah did something radical. He turned to the wall, prayed intensely, and wept bitterly. It was a prayer of desperation, faith, and total surrender. And God reversed the sentence. Before the prophet even left the palace, God sent him back with a new message. I have heard your prayer. I will add 15 years to your life. Do you understand what this means? It means there's no final diagnosis for God. There's no situation without a way out. Fervent prayer can activate God's power to reverse what seems irreversible. Maybe you're facing your own impossible sentence right now. A medical diagnosis, a financial crisis, a destroyed relationship. Here's what to do. Don't accept the impossible as the final word. Follow Hezekiah's example. Find a private place, turn to God with total honesty, and pray intensely. Cry if you need to, shout if necessary. God isn't frightened by your pain. And remember the promise of Psalm 50, verse 15. Call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you will glorify me. It's a command, a promise, and a result. The most powerful example of transforming prayer comes from Jesus himself. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he faced the darkest moment in human history. His soul was deeply sorrowful, even to death. He prayed with loud cries and tears. He sweated blood. It was pure anguish. But something extraordinary happened after that prayer battle. When the armed soldiers came to arrest him, Jesus was no longer anguished. He presented himself with such authority that when he said, "I am he," the soldiers fell to the ground at the power of his words. Prayer transformed his anguish into unshakable strength. It prepared him to transform, in the words of Pastor Hernandez Diaz-Lopez, a scaffold of horror into a stage for the glory of God. If Jesus, being the Son of God, needed to pray in his anguish, how much more do we? Prayer isn't a sign of weakness. It's the path to divine strength. So, we return to the opening question. Do you feel powerless in the face of an impossible situation? Now you know the truth. Prayer isn't your last option when everything else fails. It's the starting point for God's action. It's the catalyst that moves the arm of the Almighty. It's the force that saves nations, reverses sentences, and transforms anguish into authority. What circumstance in your life will you dare to surrender to prayer today? Because when you pray, God acts. And when God acts, the impossible becomes testimony. Get on your knees. Heaven is waiting. God bless you.